Hey y'all, Fred here. Thanks so much for joining me today. We are going to take a look at this Koenig Arius Replica knife. I got this off of AliExpress. Koenig itself as a company has a pretty interesting backstory. Young guy, since he was a young boy, loved making and building, designing knives, and kind of a family business that grew up there in Idaho. So cool backstory, interesting looking company. I hate that they're getting their knives knocked off, but pretty much everything that's ever been really popular in this world has been knocked off at some point in time. So I'm not really recommending these, but this was one. If y'all know, for a while, I'm a kind of a collector. And in as many ways as I buy them to use, some of these I just really buy because I want to have a piece of knife history. This is like my wax museum of knives, where I can't afford to go spend, $700 to $1,000+ on a knife just to put it away in a safe somewhere and never use it because I'm too afraid to mess it up. But I want to have something in my collection. When you're a little kid, at least I was when we grew up, we always built model cars. You remember the plastic model cars you get in the square boxes at the local Walmart or the Kmart back in those days, and you had to cut all the little plastic parts off and glue them together and try not to get the glue everywhere. Sometimes it ended up looking like the real thing. Sometimes it didn't. Have those little water decals. You could slide the water. You had to get them wet and soak them, and then they would slide off the backing right onto the hood of the car. Anyhow, just like you used to collect those car models just because you really liked the fanciest, coolest looking cars back in the day, kind of like that these days with knives. So this is a knife I probably won't use a whole lot, but because this is like a knife that is a classic piece of knife history, right? This is one of the more iconic knives. Anybody worth their salt who's a collector of real knives will have a real one of these in their collection somewhere. I don't really care, I'm not like trying to keep up with the Joneses, but because it's such an iconic knife with a really unique look and design, I just wanted to have one in my collection, and now I do. I was able to pick it up at a fairly decent price. This version is what they call the Style 55. I didn't realize that until even after the fact. A lot of their Koenig Arius knives don't have these little swirly cuts in them like that. That one makes this one a little bit different. We're going to talk about that in just a little bit. Before we get too deep in here, let's take a quick peek at the box that it came in. Just a plain Jane little red box with nothing. Some plastic wrap and some cheap foam in there. And you know what? That makes me happy. It is a magnet box. It does clip down there, so I guess if you wanted to store it in here, you certainly could. It would be safe enough. But I like when this is the situation, because what that means is that this is going to be really hard to pass off to anybody as a real deal knife. That's the one thing I don't like about this, is that there are going to be shady characters out there who will try to scam somebody at some point in time by trying to trick them into believing this is a real deal Koenig, right? Where it's really not. So I'm happy when the boxes don't give them a realistic looking boxes. Like the Benchmade boxes these days have gotten so realistic it's almost impossible to tell them from the real thing. There's always telltale signs, I know. But anyhow, I'm happy about the box not looking like the real box that it comes in for that very reason. Before we get too deep down in here, if you would please go down and hit that subscribe and notification bell. We do have our 2,500 subscriber giveaway coming up here. I'm going to guess in the next week or so. We're getting awfully close now. I'm going to give away some cool knives, but you do have to be a subscriber. So if you would, hit that subscribe notification bell. I definitely want to hear from you guys in the comments. I really enjoy that part of this whole knife journey even more than, maybe the collecting part. Just chatting with all you guys. I've learned so much from y'all, so I value that relationship and love hearing from you guys down in there. So throw your boy a thumbs up if you got to leave early. That'll help me out a lot. Okay, let's do some size comps. Size comps are the hardest thing in the world to come across on a camera. It just, even when you do these size comparisons, it's still hard to get a real sense of how this knife is going to feel in hand. This is a full-size knife, right? This is an 8.5-inch knife. It is longer than the PM2, in this case the OK81, which is a fantastic knife, by the way, shockingly good, or the PM3 obviously is going to be way smaller at its more small size. Let's do another semi-large knife. The 𝗏𝗏𝗀 is almost as big, but still not quite as much. How about Rocky the Raccoon? Fantastic knife, but you can see much smaller. This is a good full-size large knife, right? One more set of comparisons. Always like to put it up against a Vision FG. A lot of us have one of those now. Maybe that'll help you see how much larger this is than all of these. Pyrite Light here as well. All right, let's bring up the specs down the side, and we will talk about the actual dimensions. So as I mentioned, this is an 8.5-inch knife. This is true to form on that. The blade itself is, so the real one is about 3.5 inches. Pretty close on this one. I got about 3.4. Just depends on where you measure to. So if you get pulled over by the cops, they're going to measure from the closest point to the tip of the blade is how they're going to measure it. So that's, if I do that measurement, it's about 3.4. A lot of people will measure it to this part down here, or the cutting edge on this is 3.25 inches long. So it's yeah, it is what it is. Just that's worth knowing. 4.875. Mine came in at the 4.875 if you just measure to the end, but if you're measuring to the end of the lanyard hole here, then it comes in a little bit longer, just a hair over 5 inches. Blade thickness is dead on at 150 thousandths. The handle thickness on this is also dead on, just a little over 1/2 inch thick. These are nice, beautifully contoured anodized titanium scales here. Fills the hand nicely. The blade finish on the real one, now there's a lot of generations of the real ones that have come in different steels and different finishes and different even handle styles and finishes and all that. So the real one of these, the Style 55, should be a bead blast. You can see this is obviously a satin finished blade. However, it does have a horizontal satin, kind of almost a hand rubbed finish on the flats part of this knife. So nicely done. It is what it is. It's just, it's another way it's a little bit different. It is an almost, well, it's about a 3/4 flat grind there on that. We'll talk about the blade more in just a minute. The scales are titanium. The real blade steel comes in CTS XHP steel. This one is in D2. Chinese D2 is pretty evolved at this point in time, so it works pretty well. And this is supposed to be a good one, 58 to 60 HRC. If that's truly the case on this one, I will be happy and very pleasantly surprised with that. The weight on mine comes in a little bit lighter than the original one for some reason. I don't know why. It does have heavy milling on the inside of these scales here. Let me see if I can I may need some light. We'll take a peek at that. Oh, look, there you go. Maybe if we look from the back end. So even the lock bar side, let me see if I can get the angle right. You can see that is heavily milled out, and then the top side, it's almost so milled out that it's almost hard to see. I can't get the right camera angle on this light. There we go. That's a little bit better. Anyhow, just take my word for it. Heavily pocketed and milled out on the inside. That's what helps keep this weight down. Otherwise, it would be even much more than that. It is a frame lock. The real ones come in anywhere from $730. I've seen these in the aftermarket to well over $1,000. I got this for just under $82. I do measure behind the edge. It does feel a little thickish as you get towards the middle, but behind the edge is 16 thousandths. So that is a pretty good 𝗧𝗍 blade. I'm looking forward to seeing how this does in the cut tests. All right, let's take a little bit of a closer look here. The big thing about this knife is first of all, it's the style, right? Everybody loves this knife because it's considered to be one of the more beautiful, sexy, sleek lines in the knife world, right? You can see this thing was designed for showy beauty first and foremost. However, I'll tell you, having this nice little palm swell in the hand feels very comfortable. Ergonomically, this is actually a really nice ergonomic ergonomic knife with beautiful lines. Again, this is a Style 55, and here's one of the interesting things. I went back afterwards trying to find a real version of a Style 55 that's anodized in blue titanium scales, and I cannot find one. Maybe y'all have seen this. I don't know why the Chinese manufacturer decided to anodize these blue. You can get them in plain unfinished or anodized, not anodized, in just regular titanium gray. A lot of them will have gray scales with nice bright blue anodized hardware and a lanyard clip here. And also some will do a blue anodized pocket clip, but I can't find any in blue anodized scale, so I don't know why they decided to make this one a blue anodized. I do like it. I'm a big fan of it. I just don't know why they chose to go with that. The pocket clip is not very good on this thing. It is not true to the original, first and foremost. The original, now again, this did go through generations. There's several, 4 or 5 different generations of the Arius on the real ones. But the pocket clip design is a little bit different. It's longer here up towards the front. This is just, it's so stiff, I can't hardly get it to go over. It won't really go over my pants. And I think it's just a little too thick, that lock bar there. I may have to try to thin it out if I can. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this one because it's short, so you don't have a lot of runway to work with there. If y'all have any suggestions on that, let me know. Have you done anything that was, do you have one of these? Have you got any suggestions, you know, short of maybe sanding the bottom side to make it a little bit thinner? If it's a little bit thinner, it should be a little more flexible. It's just way too stiff as it is and not totally true to the original anyhow. It's obviously not a reversible pocket clip. Let's see what else here. Hardware, T8 on the pivot does have this standard, true to the original D-shaped pivot cut into the scales. T8s on everything, even the steel lock bar insert and over travel. Body screws are all T8s. Gotta love that. That's pretty cool. Captive pivot, like we just said there. The stop pins on this thing are internal. If you look down into the center of the knife, you will notice that there are no stop pins anywhere in here because they are attached to the blade and they rotate around in milled pockets on the inside of the scales. So internal stop pins, which is great. What that means is that you will have no interference with the sharpening choil, which while we're at it is decent. I'm going to call it pretty good. It could be a little bit taller, deeper, but this definitely will give you the ability to have a couple of sharpenings and even a couple before it gets too thick. Let me see if I can do the zoom in this way, give you a better look at that choil. It's pretty thin up here at the tip, right? That's pretty good there. Sorry for the gunk on my nails. I've been doing some work. Anyhow, I like it. They did a good job on the sharpening choil there. Do have multiple deployment options. You've been watching me hit it with the flipper. Seems to be the most comfortable for me, the most natural. However, there is nice milling around this hole, and it makes it plenty easy to do for both a thumb flip or a reverse flip. Just, you know, you're getting in that thin lock bar. It's not hard to do. It's just not the most comfortable. It's not like a flipping a Rosie or anything like that. But you can see it's pretty easy to do, and it allows you to go high or low depending on your personal preferences. For me, it's just the back flipper is just so easy to do. I will notice while we're talking about the back flipper, most of their flippers do not have jimping at all on them. So again, this is an interesting departure that this manufacturer decided to put jimping on this one. He must have seen one somewhere, I'm guessing, that caused him to think I should put jimping on it. But again, I've looked through hundreds of photos of these for sale online and didn't see a single one that had jimping. So maybe there's one out there. There must have been. Otherwise, why would he have done that? I don't know. But it is what it is. The detent on this knife is what I'm going to call excellent. It's actually excellent. It's clicky and it's stiff. It's the perfect amount of tension for all methods of deployment here. It's just, it is. It's really good detent. Will tell you while I'm at it, the lock bar is actually incredibly sensitive. I thought at first, I was like, man, I can't flip this thing to save my life. There's something wrong with this knife. And what I realized was that I was just putting too much pressure with my fingers. You can't have this finger up here on this lock bar, even lightly, will make this very hard to deploy with that flipper. I thought, well, my God, the detent is horrible on this thing. So you have to learn to just keep your fingers away. Keep them down on the pocket clip is fine, and it will flip out like a champ every single time. It's a nice heavy blade, so it does build up some good momentum. You're almost never going to fail this thing. The frame lock is good. There's nice chamfered access here. You've got some jimping on this side. There is no lock stick. It is locked up at about 30-40%, which is right where you want it. There is a steel, this is worth pointing out, there's a steel lock bar insert. I've already mentioned that, but it looks, let me see, I may even put some, oh, sorry about that, y'all. It looks like this titanium bar is sitting right on top of that steel blade tang. And I'm not sure if that's the case. I do know if you look inside when you take the scales off, the steel lock bar access does come right up flush with the top of that lock bar. So if it is, it's just going to wear away that little bit of titanium that's touching right now until it gets down to the steel lock bar insert, and then it's not going to go any farther beyond that point. So I'm not really worried about it. Just thought I would point it out. Again, no lock stick. The lock bar is easy to access, and it comes comes down. You can drop it right down to your thumb because of that flipper tab. That's what I do. And from that point, you can see on these ceramic bearings, this is a great drop shut kind of knife. It is a relatively heavy blade, but the action is really good. That makes this thing a very flippy, fidgety kind of knife. It just wants to go on home nice and smoothly every time. So yeehaw for that, right? It's fantastic on the action. Solid lockup, no side to side, up or down plate at all on that. It has a tiny, just the tiniest bit of pivot lash, only when you get it at a certain angle. And you really, I mean, you have to be very sensitive to it to feel it at all. It's not going to hurt the action of this thing at all, and that's not uncommon. I find it seems like more and more knives these days have a little bit of pivot lash there. Certainly not your $800 versions. You wouldn't expect that in the real thing. There is no detent lash there. It is a solid lockup. Like I said, you can bang this thing all day long, and it is not going to come out of its lock position. Let's take a closer look at the blade. Let me get, this is a little bit of a fingerprint magnet here, you know. It's such a beautiful blade, a big, giant, wide, big belly sweeping blade with beautiful lines in it. D2 steel, they say it's 58 to 60. If that's true, that is going to be absolutely perfect for D2 to have really the best balance of both edge retention and toughness. D2 is not really high on the toughness scale. It's reasonable. But, you know, edge retention is where it shines. But 5862 is right where you want it to maximize both of those properties. It is not extremely corrosion resistant. It is close to corrosion resistant. While I'm thinking about that, I should mention this. So there's a couple of products that you guys have seen me use on the channel before. One is this KPL knife shield, right? It is food safe, and what this is, it's called a rust preventative. What this does is somehow soaks down microscopically into the blade. And I use this on my D2 knives to help really prevent rust and corrosion, especially if you're in a humid environment or you're gonna put them away for a long period of time. I definitely will coat them in that. The other thing you may want to try is this wicked wax, and it's just what it looks like. It's a thick wax, almost like a candle wax. This is also a food safe and all natural supplement. A lot of people swear by this. Also supposed to be, you know, a good protectant of your blades, particularly D2 steel. So I'll throw links down there. I think I also have those links on my website. I use that on all my D2 stuff, just to keep it from ever having to worry about it, right? All right. What else do we want to talk about here? Drop point. Roughly in the middle. Is kind of a little on the high side of the middle line, so you are going to have to reach up pretty high if you want to do draw cutting like that, which a lot of us do with our blades. But it is what it is. You know, in exchange for that, you get that belly, which will give you the rocking action. I am going to do the cut testing with this. I expect that this D2 steel with that nice sweeping belly on the front should be able to pop through the rope and the rubber hose very nicely. The biggest drawback, I think, in terms of the blade is that it's a little on the thicker side. I mean, 150 is not bad, y'all. I mean, is that what it is? Let me double check and make sure I'm giving you the right number there. Yeah, it is 150 thousandths. That's not bad, but it almost feels like it gets a little thick quickly behind the edge. We'll see how it holds up or how it may affect our cardboard cutting. I haven't done a whole lot of cutting with this thing yet. It does have a very small swedge, although it is not true to the original. So when you look at this profile of the original, this blade gets very thin as it comes down to the tip of the blade. You will see it maintains its thickness of the blade all the way out to the very tip there. So that's going to be a nice sturdy tip. You don't have to worry about, you know, snapping off the tip of your knife if you're prying up staples, which you wouldn't do with an $800 knife, but you might do with an $80 knife. You can see the blade did come perfectly centered, so that is beautiful as well. Talked about the drop shut. Talked about the lock bar being sensitive. The branding is very true to the original, just has that small little bit of a Koenig name logo. Let me see if I can get that to appear. You got to hit the lighting just right. There you go. That's it. Otherwise, often they will tell you what steel it is. This one does not say anything about the D2 steel that it has. Factory sharpening was just okay, so maybe I'll have to zoom in on this as well. I see this a lot with these Chinese knives. They have a very small edge bevel on there. It's just a very tiny short. Let me see if I can give you well, this is definitely a much bigger edge bevel. So look how tall the ground edge bevel is on this knife. Now I did resharpen this down to 18 degrees, but that's about the same thickness and it thins down very nicely. But you can see how tall that bevel is compared to how tall this one is. It's almost non-existent. So what that tells me, they probably sharpened this to a 22 to 24 degree, even though it's fairly, I mean, 16 thousandths behind the edge is not bad at all, but probably a likely high angle on it. So I may actually put this on the old WorkSharp Pro and sharpen it down to 18 degrees before we put it in the cut test. I think that would also get past this initial steel. There's some weird discoloration, and I don't know if I can get that to show up in this lighting. When you hit the blade at a certain angle, you can almost see it's a little bit discolored right around that edge bevel there. And that makes me wonder if they have maybe burned the edge of this blade when they were sharpening it. I don't know. Anyhow, if I put my own angle on it, maybe I can get past that as well and give it a better chance for success in the old cut test there. Ergonomically, we already talked about it. Excellent. Fits great in the hand. That palm swell towards the back just really feels locked in. There's no jimping. You may have noticed that. There's an interesting internal chamfer right here on the back edge. And what that does is let the meat of your thumb kind of lock in for side-to-side stability. But there's no jimping anywhere. And that's true to the original as well. Not much of a forward finger trill here. You can get a fingertip in there. I don't know if I would. I might actually ride a finger on this nice, rounded off flipper tab there because it has that jimping. I think for the most use, I'm going to be locked in behind it. If you had to do push cutting into some kind of hard or rubbery type material, this is really going to lock your hands in and prevent them from sliding forward on the blade. So ergonomically, it's really good. Edges and corners are all knocked down. There's nothing sharp. Even the, like right here where this is often a sharp piece, you can almost see that's beveled right there. So they have taken some kind of sandpaper or something to knock the edge off of this. So they've really done a good job of going to great extents to make it feel really good. The other thing I'll point out, this is pretty cool, there's a window that goes through the lock bar relief through the pocket clip there. There's usually milling in this lock bar relief area. On the ones that I've seen, at least, they have some kind of milling pattern still visible in there. This one does not. It's another way you'll tell this apart from the other. Let's talk about the negatives. The pocket clip is basically unusable. We already talked about that. There's no jimping on it, but that's true to the original. Certainly wouldn't hurt to have jimping. There's a little bit of a thumb ramp there. That may help a little bit, but I mean, that's just slick blade right there. So nothing really to lock your thumb in there. They could do that. Again, the factory edge came a little bit thin. I don't think that's a great factory edge. We didn't do any cut testing though, did we? Just to show you. How about this? So it's okay. Again, I have not sharpened it. You saw it hung up there. At best, this is a 9. There's no real hang-ups, but it's not, crispy, clean, laser beam sharp. So again, I'll probably sharpen it for that reason before we put it through our cut test. Otherwise, the other potential downer is that these beautiful blue anodized scales are going to get scratched up. If you lay this down on concrete or any hard surfaces, if it rubs around, scrapes on anything, you're going to end up with scratches on your beautiful knife, which you certainly don't want to do on an $800, $1,000 knife, but I don't care as much on an $80 knife. But again, I don't see me using this. It's just too big. I don't carry large 8.5-inch knives unless I just know I'm going to be doing some really hard work out there. Overall, let's bring this home. Really well built, full-size 8.5-inch knife, 3.25-inch cutting length, nice big sweeping belly, excellent ergonomics, apart from the lack of jimping, excellent action, just smooth drop shut action on this thing. I do sit and fidget with this at my desk all day long. So I love the action on this thing. It does have your multiple deployment methods, both the tab and the, easy to get in that thumb hole there. Very functional design, good D2. If it's 58 to 60 like it says, it should do pretty well in our test, which means it'll hold up. I don't really recommend these. I'm just sharing my experience that I got for it. Again, I got this more than anything else to put in my old wax museum collection of knives because it's an excellent representative example of one of the most beautiful, iconic knives of this particular decade, right? Some point in time, I'm going to sit down with my grandkids and I'm going to pull out all Grandpa's old knives and I'm going to tell them the story about this knife that really represents a $1,000 knife, but Grandpa didn't pay nearly as much as that. So, you know, there you go. It is what it is. I wanted it for my collection as much as anything. But that being said, I am absolutely confident this feels good in the hand and will hold up to anything. I will put it through our cut test, and we're going to see how this D2 steel holds up. Otherwise, I am very happy with this purchase. I am not disappointed at all. I got it for the reasons I have mentioned, and for those purposes, I am quite happy with it. As always, don't forget to visit my website, Blades on a Budget. All of my reviews are posted there, a nice, easy to digest format. If you want to binge watch a bunch, or you just want to find some old episodes you might have missed, easy to search. Plus all the knives that I review on the channel, all the different products and everything else. I have easy to search pages with, you know, indexing and search links and all that. You can find links to all the different products and knives and all that there as well. Do have a contest coming up, so don't forget to subscribe if you're not already subscribed down there below. Hit your thumbs up for me. Help your boy out. That always helps the algorithms. Otherwise, I appreciate you guys. Love to hear what you think. Do any of you guys have one of these, either real or imagined? And what do you think about it? What has your experience been with it? This is still pretty new to me, so I'd love to hear what you guys think. I know a lot of you guys buy the same kind of knives I do, so let me know what you think down there in the comments. Otherwise, I appreciate y'all. As always, we will talk to you soon. Take care.